Well, it perhaps looks quite a threatening sky, that, but we're not expecting any rain. And I'm back at Misson Carr again this evening. A rather last-minute decision because I've got another 2 sessions to get in. And I didn't think tonight would be quite right. I thought the temperature would drop quite cool, but now I'm here, it seems absolutely perfect. It's as still as anything. And the forecast rain in the next few nights, although the temperatures are indeed going to be a few degrees higher than tonight's temperature, which is forecast to go down to about 11. And that depends really on how much this cloud breaks up. And they are forecasting favourable amounts of clouds. So I've took the chance and the opportunity that the following nights might be wet. So July the 24th already, we've got August fast approaching at an unbelievably quick rate. So we'll see what moths have survived the last few days of heavy and persistent rain that we've had over much of Nottinghamshire. Well, soon time to get the light going and get the generator fired up. It's 9:30 now, and there's a noticeable difference in the shortening and drawing in of the evenings. That's frightening. Even more frightening that another week will be into August, and then the nights really start to draw in and the numbers of moths starts to decline. We should get a decent amount tonight. Conditions are just perfect. There isn't a hint of a breeze at all. Beautiful. So, I think it's time that we get fired up. Well, we're off and running and await the first moth, which shouldn't be too much longer. There is just a gentle breeze now, but very pleasant. And I'm at the entrance again to Misson Carr, limited to where I can trap here because of longhorn cattle, unfortunately, so it's got to be near these gates. But it's worked a charm so far. We'll see if it does the same tonight as the first few moths start to appear. Well, an hour gone, well, just coming up to an hour gone, very quiet. Although the moths are just starting to drop in now. But the last trapping session started off very quiet, if you remember, if you've watched that one. And this one's the same, but we're a good couple of weeks on from July the 7th, when I last trapped here. It's July the 24th today, if I haven't mentioned it. We've had an awful lot of rain in between this session and the last trapping session, and that will make a big difference, and certainly appears to have done, at least so far. But the moths will come in, I've no doubt about that, but no doubt a number will have been affected by the rain. Rain's not good for moths. Prolonged periods of what at times has been heavy rain in the last fortnight, some torrential thunderstorms, and even yesterday there was some torrential showers that I came through on the way back from Nottingham. So we'll see what turns up. It's a good thing about mothing, it's the unpredictability. You just never know. I'm starting to get 1 or 2 more moths in now. Things are picking up, and this is probably the best of the lot so far. This is a fantastically marked, beautiful black arches, and just look at the antenna on this male. Of all the moths that I'm likely to catch this evening, this moth probably has the most extreme in terms of antenna. It's a fabulous thing. The markings can vary in their intensity, and females are marked differently in a way to males are, and this of course is a male having that feathered antenna. This is a moth that's done really well in the last 10 years or so. Dennis himself caught the first one back in Notts after many years, the night before the second record for Nottinghamshire in recent years occurred. Since then it's done remarkably well and can be found and will be trapped over time in all of the county's woodlands, I imagine, and it even turns up in suburban gardens. This is a species that I've certainly had at home in Market Walsall. So this is black arches, probably the best marked moth we have on the sheet at the moment. Well, it's incredibly quiet in comparison to the last two sessions. It's just gone 2300 hours, so still plenty of time yet, but I thought we might get a few more moths than this by this stage. We're on to about 40 moths, probably just over 40 actually. All of a sudden it'll really pick up, and there's no doubt in my mind that the recent weather of the past fortnight or so has clearly had an effect on the moths. Plus the flight periods of moths are obviously getting earlier. Moths can be now almost over and done with by the time some of certainly the older books will have them as starting their flight period. How times and flight periods have changed over the last 100 years. But there's a number of moths coming in now, but say not a great variety of species range at the moment. The most pleasing moth has been an appearance by a magpie, which was only brief. Long time since I've had magpie, and that's nice to see. Hopefully one will come back in again and be able to film it, but a lot of the stuff isn't settling, and a lot of the stuff that has settled you've seen before, and I don't want to keep showing the same species. But apart from peach blossom and the black arches, which you have seen the black arches, not a lot else has come in that I can show you. There's quite a lot of flies I've noticed just flying just above the sheet, but moths are starting to come in now. There's a couple of drinker moths in, common rustics and usual fare, a number of July high flyers. Now there's a beautiful moth, July high flyer, and incredibly variable as well. So we'll see what the next hour or so brings in. I think it should bring in a cup of tea. I think it's time for some refreshment. Well, this is a moth that I've been after showing you for several weeks actually, and even a month or so ago I was trudging along the roads of Eakring looking for the larva of this moth. The larva is distinctive, being cream and marked with black. And this is a beautiful moth. Hopefully it won't get smashed up by some of the other moths that are coming in now, but this is a magpie moth. It's a moth that I've not seen for several years now, and used to be really common at one time. It's certainly declined in the Eakring area, where it could be very, very common. You could drive along the roads on a night time and see dozens of these moths fluttering across the road. And the caterpillar, I used to see the caterpillar on a gooseberry bush we had as part of the hedge at home. That was many years ago, but I could see the caterpillars yearly, but that's long since ceased now. So it's lovely to see this moth here at Misson. Fabulous moth. I don't know whether it'll be common where you are. I've not had this species at home yet, but hopefully this moth may return to former numbers in a few years' time. So that's a magpie moth, absolute beauty. Well, it is steadily getting busier, but the number of moths is certainly well down on the last 2 trapping sessions. Hints of species of late summer. I can see there's a Griffula tristella in by the looks of it. In a way, it'll be good that this session's quite quiet, because the trouble is when you're trapping large numbers of moths, as in the last 2 trapping sessions here at Misson Carr, it spoils you for wanting to go out and trap in your garden or somewhere like Eakring, simply knowing the fact that you're not going to get the moths that you did on the last time you trapped. So it brings you back down to earth a little bit. At least this session's nice enough to be steady, and it's easy to keep an eye on what's coming in and what suddenly turns up. Something good will come in, something unexpected. In fact, there is a species actually, as I sit here and waffle on, and that's southern wainscot. I've got to photograph it. It's a moth that I've not seen before personally, and the one that's come in looks as fresh as a daisy. So that's going back home to sunny Market Water. So that's nice to see. There is a deep sort of ditch, a Phragmites filled ditch, right along the southern border of Misson Carr, and that's one reason why I've trapped here, because it has turned up some very special wainscots and other species before. So I think it's time for a wander around to check on the light, but there's quite a few latticed heath knocking about. Well, we're going along steadily. Just see what the time is. We're on 64 species, just gone midnight, a couple of minutes after midnight. Nothing rare has come in yet, but something really nice, and unfortunately it won't settle too much. Well, not in a position to film it unless I can film it while it's in the pot, but this is a bordered beauty. I'll put a photo in here because this is one of those moths that you'll see. It'll catch your eye if you go through photo galleries or pictures of moths in the usual moth books. You'll long to see one of these, and it's an absolute beauty of a moth. The first one I ever found, I found dead on the road near Kersal while I was bird watching, and then it took me a number of years before eventually got one of these to light, and I have had one at home. It's a most beautiful moth, as you can see, absolute corker. So that's bordered beauty which is coming, but it remains steady and quiet. There's a few potentially interesting micros, but all in all there's not many micros at all. There's not many macros, to be honest. Counts of all species are going to be small, but it's just a case of keeping an eye on the back of that sheet and seeing what comes in. Well, here's an absolute corker, and this is the bordered beauty that I was telling you about, and it is exactly that. It's an appropriately named moth, but a truly beautiful moth. It's one of the nicest that we have here in the UK, and for many years this is a species that I looked at in books and longed to see, and it didn't disappoint at all when I eventually found it. My first specimen was found dead on the road, hit by a car, and that was in the Eakring area many years ago. And Dillis and I rarely trapped this, only on a couple of occasions if I remember right. So this is a nice moth for me to catch, usually found in areas where there's poplars if I remember right. Locally where I live there's not terrific numbers of poplars, so this is a moth that I rarely see, and in fact I think I only have one record at home, but it's a cracking thing, bordered beauty. And this is one of those moths that will occasionally turn up at suburban locations, if you live in the vicinity of poplars, you may well get this more commonly than what I do. So that's a nice moth for tonight. Love catching this. Well, we're just after 1 o'clock in the morning. Moths are still coming in, as you would expect. Temperature's down, it's down to 12 now. It started off at 14, but it doesn't feel like 12. But that's probably because there's plenty of moths to go through, so you don't get a chance to sit there and feel cold. But we're definitely changing now. A lot of moths on this sheet are second broods, rather worryingly, because it means the passing of the mothing season. Not that mothing really has a season. You can trap a moth or moths 365 nights of the year, but the summer months soon come and go, so whenever you can, get out with your trap. But it's clear that moths have been affected by the summer of last year. There's no doubt about that. There's an enormous dearth of footman moths. I'm hardly getting any footman moths. In fact, I've probably had no more than a dozen footman moths of all the species all year, to be honest. This evening there's been one buff footman and 2 dingy footmen. Now, footmen would normally make up a huge part or percentage of your total catch. We've had some enormous counts of common footmen, scarce footmen and dingy footmen in Sherwood Forest and other sites. And I think the reason is purely because the larvae of all the footmen feed on lichens. So lichens suffered terribly during the dry, sunny weather. And that's a footman that's just fluttered onto the sheet, actually. That's a common footman. But it's still not enough to make up the kind of total that you would normally get. And I'm presuming that this is a very similar situation across the UK. That footman moths have been affected. Caterpillars have not been able to get the food, and that the lichens all dried up during the course of last year, and so they've really struggled as well. Eudonia species and Scoparia species of pyralids, they seem the same. They're lower than what I would expect, and they feed on mosses. So the dry weather, while it might be great for getting that suntan, for the larvae of butterflies and moths, prolonged dry spells, well, they spell disaster. It's going to take a year or two for the numbers to get back to anything like what they were. And of course, that means getting a normal summer. And with the amount of rain we've had of late, 2023 is a normal summer. But we're into the last hour now, so we'll see if any of those real rarities of Misson decide to turn up. Well, I've just stepped away from the proceedings for 10 minutes. Often gives you a nice break. You can be at the seat for 3-4 hours or so, or even more. And it's just nice just to step away and maybe have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee and a bite to eat, and then go back. But in the ditch just in front and right of the camera, there's a cricket species singing, and I think it's short-winged conehead. I'm going to see if I can record it once the generator is off. It's very faint. I've not heard short-winged conehead sing. I can hear Russell's bush cricket singing, and I can hear long-winged conehead. I can hear both those very, all right. And dark bush cricket, I can hear that. But this is a call or a song that I've not heard before, and I think that it's short-winged conehead, and that will be a really good record if I can confirm that. And we have a bat flying around. You may well have glimpsed it. So we'll go and see if anything's dropped in onto that sheet. Now then, this is a moth that we've caught the last 2 occasions that are trapped here at Misson Carr, but they'll never settle down, usually reluctant to settle down, and especially on a flat level surface such as this. And this is a large emerald, a truly beautiful moth, and the largest of all the emerald moths that we have here in the UK. It's unmistakable by size, and it really is an absolutely beautiful thing. The whole moth, as you can see, if I can try and sort of tilt it, is that beautiful, almost sage green, but only very finely marked. The markings are very pale and almost indiscernible. But the moth is easily identified. It's an absolute cracker. Always nice to see this come into light. In Nottinghamshire, it's probably commonest in the Sherwood Forest area, and we used to get it in numbers when we trapped at Sherwood Forest. So that's large emerald. It's a real corker, fabulous moth, and a moth I always like to see. But it's a much depleted and quieter scene than normal, at least on the last 2 visits. I've got 4 large emeralds in now, and the commonest moths have been latticed heath. I've never caught so many latticed heath. Not that I've caught a huge number, but I think we're just into double figures. And July high flyer, which is a beautiful moth. I'll drop a photo in of July high flyer because I don't think I've showed that at all. But it's a very attractive and beautiful moth, mostly green as well, but extremely variable, and one you will get in the garden. But nothing really rare. Well, time's up. It's 1:45 now, and I've done 4 hours trapping, and that's more than enough for me. I don't think we're going to gain a great deal. Moth numbers have clearly dropped in the last fortnight since I last trapped here at Misson Carr, and that's numbers that have dropped in terms of species and of individual moths. And clearly the heavy rain that we've had on and off over the last fortnight hasn't helped proceedings, and it certainly seems to have shortened a lot of the flight times for a number of species. But quite pleased to get a number of this large emerald, a truly beautiful moth, one of many that we do have in the UK. As I keep saying before, but I'm aiming this at people perhaps thinking of delving into the world of moths. There are some beautiful moths that we have in the UK, and this is one of them. But you need to enjoy your mothing. That moth is now enjoying its freedom, and I'm about to switch off the generator and get packed up. Moth trapping is a great hobby, if not somewhat antisocial, but if you can find somebody to get out and about with and you enjoy that, then that's all the better. It makes the hobby much more enjoyable and gives you that sense of security as well. So, time to pack up, and then we've got a steady drive home in the early hours of the morning.